going back a little bit in time, this is where I started. I started with 2 Royal Anglian. I was a private soldier in 2 Royal Anglian back in the 1980s. And I suspect I was taking these photographs with the Canon T70, which I bought when I was 17 years old and still have. If we get to the end of the presentation, I've got a photograph of all my camera kit. And if I said that I've never sold anything, you'd believe me when you see it all laid out on the table. So I'd also say at the start, I'm trying to get a balance here between decent photographs and decent stories. And the two things don't always match up. So I just say these are early photographs that I have taken of the guys that were close to me when I first joined the army. I served over in Celle. I was in 2 Royal Anglian, which was my county regiment. I was in B Company, B Leicestershire Company, which was my hometown. And really, it was the regimental system working. It worked in a regimental system in action. I was 1,000 miles away from Leicester, surrounded by lads from Leicester that I had a lot in common with, although I was the poshest private soldier in Lance Corporal they'd ever had. We served in Germany for a while. When I first joined, we were training to go to Battus. So I kind of started my military career in Germany and then went over to the prairie in Western Canada, where the army can do both armored formation size exercises and live firing. The training area is about the size of Wales. So we were preparing for that when I first joined my battalion. We did that exercise in the August, came back, and then started preparing for West Belfast. I was surprised how many photographs I have of us cutting each other's hair. The black guy having his hair cut top left and doing the hair cutting bottom right is a guy called Michael. I think the friendships that you make in the army are very strong. Yeah, Michael, 20 years after this photograph was taken, became godfather to my son. And I think I'm godfather to at least one of his daughters, maybe two. The chap on the left having his head shaved, I don't know what it is about soldiers that love having their head shaved. The chap on the left and bottom right, Stu Kifton, he features later in one of my stories. Stu and I were great mates. We joined at about the same time. We were in the same section. We were at similar levels of fitness. We used to do a lot of training together. He went off to join, well, I went off to Sandhurst and was commissioned. He went off to Hereford and joined the UK Special Forces, where he spent most of the rest of his career. And I've heard wonderful stories about him and how inept he was. I mean, we hold the SAS in very high regard for good reason, but it doesn't stop them being inept at times. I did a little charity walk. I did a 400-mile walk for Stu from Muscat to Dubai when I was kind of filling in time, went over the Jebel and over the desert and over the mountains, doing a bit of fundraising for him. He went from being an extraordinarily fit young man to somebody in a persistent vegetative state as a result of a motorcycle accident. So while I'm massively in favor of free will and free choice, always wear a helmet on your motorcycle. It wasn't long before we ended up in Belfast. So my first tour was in 1989. We were in North Howard Street Mill. Going from the top left, great photograph of, a very evocative photograph of kids with a black taxi. I'm not sure if that's my rifle and Berry, but remind me if I do this again, never to give a loaded rifle to a small child. The bottom left-hand side is a tribal map of West Belfast. I've still got this somewhere in a drawer, one of those things that you never get rid of. And it's folded into small squares because we used to attach it to the buttstock of our rifles, and you'd fold it to the bit that you were going out on that day so that you could read the road names. Although after being there for 4 months, I knew that place better than I knew my own hometown. That was a crazy tour. We had a guy killed, Nick Peacock was killed outside the Rock Bar in the first week that we were there. And it's like, this is the first point where I swear, it's like, fuck, this is real. One dead, 1 week in, and we've got another 20 weeks to go. Now, I'm in the infantry. I'm not very bright. What do the suns look like on that? Fortunately, he was the only fatality that we had on that tour. Although another friend of mine, Fish Gill, not sure why they call him Fish. He lost his legs in the last week with an IED outside the back of North Howard Street Mill. But he's I can't say he's bounced back. He's rolled back, I suppose, and is now trying out for the Olympic archery team with his one reigning good eye. So that was quite a dynamic tour, quite an interesting tour. The photograph in the middle are military Land Rovers, and we used to do patrols supporting the military, called Mike Echo's military escorts, to the RUC. And I think the one time that I was coming back, the one time that I had really close running, we were coming back from Springfield Road IUC station and took a shortcut. But unbeknownst to us, about 15 people before us all taking shortcuts along the same way, a pattern that had been identified by the IRA. So they RPG'd us, put a rocket propelled grenade down the road at the back of us. And I was just tired and it'd been a long day. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is the last thing I need. It's keeping me from my bed. And my first thought was, bloody hell, it's fireworks. No, it's not. It's a rocket. It went right over the top of us, flew all the way down Lanark Road, Lanark Way, and hit a church at the other end and blew all the windows out. I mean, if that had hit us, it would have been unpleasant, but it didn't. So it's fine. Was it Churchill that said something along the lines of, being shot at and missed is the most exciting thing that you can do? And well, I can vouch for that. This is our, so those guys that were all having chips and giggles, I suppose, in Germany and shaving their hair and spending a lot of time drinking. This is us just preparing to go out on patrol. Mike, the godfather of my son there, carrying a bit of kit on his back. And the guy, I don't suppose you can really see the tension, but there were moments there where you knew that there had been something planted for you because of the work of the security services, but to enable them not to compromise their sources, you were still asked to go on patrol. So you might know that there was a heavy machine gun waiting for you in the beach mounts, but don't worry, we've got you covered. It's like, that's leads to some quite twitchy moments.